All right. Well, welcome everybody to our pre-PELS session for tonight. My name is Lizzie Martin, and I am the Vice Chair for Empire Multi-District President-Elect Learning Seminar, MD-PELS. And I'm glad that you're here tonight. Thank you so much for making the time. These pre-sessions are really to help make sure that when we get to our in-person weekend in Syracuse, March 14th and 15th, you have some of these nuts and bolts already in your toolkit, and you can take advantage of the inspiration and networking and connections that you're going to make in person. If we could ask everybody to rename yourselves with your name and your club. If you haven't, if you hover in your little video square and click on the three dots, you'll see an option to rename. We just love to know where you're from. And please also, if you could mute yourselves, just so we don't interrupt our speakers tonight. Of course, once we get to the interactive parts, you'll be able to unmute yourselves and engage. But also at any time, put questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat to help out Lisa and Pamela, and we'll make sure to answer any questions. You can also use the raise hand button at the bottom when we get to that interactive part as well if you want to chime in and are more comfortable that way. So I'm just here to say welcome to everyone and help with the Zoom. I am pleased to pass off this meeting to your leaders, your district governor-elect from 7120, Lisa, and your president-elect from CNY, Pamela. Take it away, ladies.
All right. So I guess I will jump in first. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As you know, tonight's session is going to be on club finances and Rotary resources. Every fireside chat we've had since September has focused on a particular theme that we believe is relevant to you as president-elects, whether you're a first-time president-elect or an encore. And as you begin to think about stepping in or re-stepping into this leadership role, you need to keep in mind that financial leadership matters just as much as vision and inspiration does. Budgets, fundraising, grants, sustainability aren't just numbers. They're the tools that allow your club to create lasting impact, grow membership, and remain vibrant for years to come. Tonight's conversation, like most of them before, is going to be grounded in the Rotary Action Plan, which challenges us to increase our impact, expand our reach, enhance participant engagement, and increase our ability to adapt. And every financial decision your club makes touches at least one of those priorities. A strong budget supports impact. Grants expand reach, smart fundraising engages members, and sustainable systems increase your club's ability to adapt. So tonight is about practical, real-world insight, what actually works in Rotary clubs, what pitfalls to avoid, how to make the most of the resources that you already have available to you at the club, district, and international levels. Hopefully all of you received a reflection worksheet before the session. If not, I'll put it again in the chat for folks who joined a little bit late. But you should definitely use this worksheet to jot down ideas, strategies, or questions as we go. It's yours to take back to your club and use as a planning tool. Sound good? Okay. So we are going to be joined tonight by three panelists. We have Rocky Martinez, we have Lori Dietrich, and we have, who is our third person? I'm blanking out. Scott Healy, my district treasurer. Each of whom has led clubs through budgeting, fundraising, grants, and sustainability challenges. And what I'll do right now is I'll ask each panelist first to briefly introduce themselves, your name, your club, your roller experience that connects you to and your roller experience that connects you to this topic. So let us start with Rocky, because he's the first one I see on my screen.
Hi,
Sorry, Rocky.
everyone. No, hey, thank you. I'm Rocky Martinez. I'm with the Johnson City Rotary Club. I have held all the positions there can be in your club, as you had with anyone with a small club. From that standpoint, president multiple years, treasurer, secretary, membership. Currently today, I'm also have a role in the district in the financial chair. So I've been involved both in grants, the finances of a district and the finances of a club. So just a little bit of background of everything.
Yay, perfect, perfect. Did you mention that you're also a past district governor? Yeah,
Also a
okay.
past district governor.
One
And
of
if
my
you and
role
if,
models.
and if you lose your cell phone, I know where to find it.
Yes. Rocky's one of my buddies. Scott, Scott Healy, how about you? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. Scott Healy from the Newark Rotary Club in District 7120. I am a past president, past assistant governor, chaired a few committees. I am currently our district treasurer, finance chair, and also serve as our club's foundation chair, and have done that for a few years. And by day, when I'm not doing Rotary, I'm a CPA, so I have a little background in the financial world.
Lots of background, absolutely. And last but not least, Lori.
Yes, good evening. Scott, you're going to be my new best friend as a CPA, coming to that time of year, right? So I'm relatively new to Rotary as a member, but I have been around Rotary since I was a teenager, as my
Mm,
dad was a member of Penfield Rotary for ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Um, and he was not super computer literate because back in he was an architectural engineer and everything they did was on drawing boards, et cetera. So every time he had something he had to do for Rotary, guess who got to do it? Um, so I have a background that way. My real job, if you will, during the day, I'm a real estate agent and I work with investors. So I get a lot of finance stuff through osmosis, through those types of positions. I have been president 3 years ago, and now I'm back up around. We have a small club, also have designed all of our record keeping for our finances, similar to a QuickBooks setup, but done it through Excel. So I've taken my learnings from QuickBooks and without paying for it, applied some of the principles to our spreadsheets.
Oh, I love it. Thank you very much. So, as you can see, we've got a pretty diverse group of panelists. And what we're going to start with is the foundation of budgeting and financial planning. In the Rotary Action Plan, increasing our impact means putting our resources where they matter most, and increasing our ability to adapt means building financial flexibility so clubs can respond to change. So a budget isn't just a spreadsheet, it's a value statement about what your club prioritizes. So, starting with Lori, to you, what does a healthy Rotary Club budget look like? And what categories must always be included to support long-term impact?
Okay, so of course I got to bring up my spreadsheet so I'm not talking off the top of my head because
Perfect.
I
And
just got off three
feel
other meetings, so my brain's got to like readjust. Um, so a healthy budget, whether it's your personal budget, a club budget, a church budget, whatever the budget is, means you're not spending more than what you gain in revenue, right? Because then we're all be in really big trouble. So our goal in Puffield Rotary is to say, okay, let's look at, and I've done this now for about 8 years. I have the history. I said, well, let's look at where we made our money, how much money we've made, what kind of percentage of increase can we expect based on the same thing if we don't change our resources where we get them. And then let's look at our expenses. So we take a pretty good deep dive on both sides of the equation. So at the end of the day, we make enough money to support all the things we want to support. Does that answer most everything?
that answers the question.
Okay.
Scott or Rocky, do you want to add to that at all? If not, I will toss out another question.
The only thing I'll add to it is that there's always two sides to a budget.
Mm,
And there's always what are you going to spend and what are you going to earn? And the goal is always to get those to equal, but that is not the case in everybody's plan.
mm,
Sometimes we have a bad terminology, which is called reserves. And I'm a believer that you shouldn't have reserves, but there's no reason not to have them. And we can get into another long discussion about that later. But there's two sides to that whole plan that you really clearly got all the points on.
perfect. Scott, how would you advise president-elects to build a budget that reflects their club's priorities, service, membership, public image, without discouraging creativity and or new ideas?
Well, I think the starting point for your budget is always, what have you done? What do you need to do? And I think for a lot of incoming presidents, your best friend should be your club treasurer, especially if they've been in that role for a couple of years and maybe are much more familiar with that. So it's a good way to get acclimated to what the normal is. But
Mm,
then really to the point of the question is, how do you then factor in new projects, new fundraisers, just new ideas without putting down, oh, we can't afford to do that. So and I would go back to Rocky's comment just a bit, not to really disagree, but I think if a club is fairly healthy financially, having a plan to build a little bit of a reserve is not a bad thing, but there should be a plan to spend your budget as well. I'm a firm believer. I've been on other nonprofit boards, and if you're supposed to spend the money, if your budget calls for you spending the money, you should spend it. It's not government accounting where if you don't spend it, you lose it the next year. So you have to run out and do it. So, but I do think it's important to make sure you've got the basics from your past and then factor in the new things. And it's a challenge sometimes to figure out what maybe a new initiative is going to cost
mhm,
and also how you're going to pay for it. It's really easy to say, hey, we're going to do a chicken barbecue and the $2,000 is going to go towards a scholarship. But
mm.
sometimes the math doesn't always work out that way. So it's good to just know that you've factored in all those other little ancillary things that go along with it.
Right. And also sometimes during a year, surprises come up, things happen. And you might want to divert some money to, a cause that you didn't know about at the beginning of the year. So I'm also an advocate of having a little bit of money that's untagged for those sorts of emergencies, but of course using up all the money by the end of the year. Going back to Rocky, what are some common budgeting mistakes that Rotary clubs make year after year that actually limit their impact or adaptability?
I'll go with what I call the low hanging fruit, and that's continuing to do the same thing with the same amount of money every year.
Okay.
Every year you should take a look at those things that you do and understand the expenses, whether they go up, they go down, you have a bigger scope or smaller. Continuing to do the same thing or budgeting for the same thing for the same project for every year um, is not realistic. You
Mhm.
have to take each one of your projects, each one of your service items, and make it part of the what is happening today. Um, you may not touch as many people as you want, or you may touch a stretch goal. There's always the opportunity to do more, to expand projects. So, biggest thing that I see happening with clubs when they do it is they could have $500 for this and they do $500 again, not
Hmm.
understanding what the project is. So, I think one of the key things to do is to look at each one of your projects and understand the costs. Scott's answer is 100% dead on. Your best friend should be your treasurer.
Right.
Your best friend should be your treasurer because you really need to work and understand how things go and what the expenses are so that you can build your best foot forward and put your best plan out there because a budget is a plan that you're trying to go towards.
Gotcha. So for PEs, especially first time president elects, if you've never seen your club's budget yet, that should be on your list of things to do starting tomorrow is take a look at the budget. And if one doesn't exist, that's a problem. So you're going to want to start thinking about where the money has gone and what you're going to want to do during your year in terms of allocating the money. Perfect. Anybody else want to add comments to that or ask any questions about that topic before we move on? Okay. So budgeting isn't just about
Uh,
balancing
I,
out the,
Gary had his hand up.
oh, thank you. I can't see. Thank you.
That's all
sorry,
right.
I'm still trying to figure. Anyway, yeah, so I was wondering, what are some mistakes
Oh,
that you have seen new president-elects make, if any, with their budgets?
Anybody?
Yeah,
I'll jump in. Oh, sorry. Um, I think the biggest mistakes that I can foresee are just PEs coming into the role and being unfamiliar with the club finances entirely and overlooking all those basic things. I mean, clubs have to pay dues to RI and the district, and they may have other fixed obligations. And that's a baseline. You really have to know that and understand that before you add on the layer of new projects or new things. So I do think that's a big part of it. I also think a simple idea to just think through and share with a board is the idea that if somebody comes with an idea, you almost need like a little worksheet guideline. They have to come with a plan to pay for it. You know, come with a little bit of thought to the rest of it. That doesn't mean it has to be finished, but if they want to spend money and do something, they should think about the other side of it. And sometimes there's a big consideration there.
Perfect. Somebody else wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to chime in. There's two big things that I have seen some of our presidents go through. One is not thinking ahead in that not all money is going to get spent at the same time. So planning for the fact if you're doing scholarships, for example, that probably won't happen till spring, right? And if you're and new presidents have wonderful ideas and they get crazy and they start spending money, and all of a sudden, come spring, we're out of money, right? So I've seen that a little bit, not only with Rotary but other clubs, other organizations I'm with. You know, you really got to be conscious of those timelines and what you're spending. The other big thing that I'll say for, again, Rotary or any other organization is, we have our budget. Again, I developed this budget because I'm a architect's daughter and I got to see stuff, very logically. So we've broken ours down into revenues, and that's got a couple of lots of categories, but two major portions: revenue that we can use and pass through revenue that's just coming in and going out. So I still track it, but it's not usable money because it's just in and out. We have our expenses, which we have obviously the expenses for things that we're doing. But the biggest thing that I see a lot of organizations struggle with is what I call administrative expenses, right? That's money that you isn't going towards the community, right? A good example of that is if you use Club Runner, right, as a club, and you pay for that. That's an administrative expense. You have to budget that because you got to pay for it, but it can't go out to the community, right? So really taking a look at those administrative expenses, whether it be post office boxes, stamps, or whatever it is that falls into that category, is really important to be able to maximize the amount of money going out to the community. And then our third category is giving, and we have that broken down into several different categories, whether it be Rotary categories, community categories, youth programs, etc. But we actually budget in a discretionary giving fund so that if somebody comes to us and says, hey, we'd really like Rotary to participate, and we're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We've built in something for something that we didn't know was going to come up, but we want to give to. So that's how we handle that part of it.
Perfect. Lori, if people or president-elects have questions about what you just said, would you be okay with them reaching out to you?
Yeah, I know. I talk fast and I'm a million miles an hour. So my apologies.
No. These are all really, really good ideas. And I'm asking, as a first-time president-elect from 3 or 4 years ago, where I knew none of this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how clubs operate and what you can learn new.
And I'd be interested to know, again, I built this from scratch because I know some of you may remember Mary Ann Mady. She did it by hand on a notebook, and I'm like, oh, hell no.
Exactly.
Right. So so I'd be interested to know how other clubs do it through my other businesses. So I use QuickBooks, but I didn't want to pay for that through Rotary because that's an administrative expense. So I'd be curious to know how other clubs manage that.
Yeah, toss it in the chat if you wouldn't mind. Rocky?
Just to build on her point is, for those of you that are in clubs that don't have a formal budget, that don't have a QuickBooks plan, that don't have a spreadsheet, you're okay. Don't get nervous. We're talking about a lot about things that in the perfect world. For those clubs that don't have them, just the simple fact of working with your treasurer, understanding where you're spending money, and hopefully you can drive forward the process to have a formalized budget in the process. But if you don't have one, don't think that this process is broke. You can still ask the questions that we're talking about. Administrative cost, how much money do you bring in? What are you planning on spending? Think of it as a big basic, the three things that everyone's talked about. So don't be nervous if you don't have a formalized budget process.
Thank you, Rocky. Thank you very, very, very much. Appreciate that. Any other questions or suggestions before we
That
move on?
that would just make me icky.
I know, but to
We,
each
we
his
have a
own. Go
we have a
ahead.
question in the chat.
Okay.
How does your club manage your budget software used by hand spreadsheet? So, yeah.
Yeah, I just put that in a
Oh, you
comment.
did. Okay, so
Okay.
it's a
People
conversation
can
starter.
answer that as they go in the chat. Okay.
Okay, perfect, 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 perfect. Okay, so what we learned is that budgeting isn't just about numbers, it's about aligning money with mission. Now let's talk about the Rotary Foundation and how grants can dramatically increase your club's impact and reach. So once again, the Rotary Action Plan calls on us to increase our impact and expand our reach beyond what any single club can do alone. Rotary Foundation grants, both district and global, are one of the most powerful tools for doing exactly that. Yet many clubs still think that grants are intimidating or only for large clubs. How many of you have heard that question or heard that statement? A couple of us. Good. Okay. So, what is the biggest misconception that clubs have about the Rotary Foundation and grants that prevent them from even getting started? Let's go with Scott on that question.
Well, I think just really what you already indicated. I think the lack of understanding of what's available and what the process is deters clubs from even pursuing it. What I would say, I'm by far no expert in this area, but what I do know is that there are resources available within clubs, within districts, um, to assist with that process. And the financial matching and amplification of partnering with another club or another district um, can make a project much more great, much greater and much more impact than one small group or one club doing it by themselves. We've been fortunate in our club. We're a fairly large active club. We almost always have some international project going.
Mm.
For as long as I know, we've gotten a district grant for a local project. So part of it, I think, is educating your membership about what you can do with money. I know as foundation chair, one of the oppositions I hear all the time was, well, I don't want to give money that goes somewhere else. I want to give money that stays in our community. And I said, well, all the money you give to the annual fund comes back, half of it comes back and we get to use it in our district and our clubs get those grants. So I think education is a big piece of this. And just knowing that if your club is putting up a couple $1,000s and there's a match and maybe you have another club, all of a sudden you've got a $10,000 or $15,000 project that can be much more impactful. So don't resist the process. Just look for the learning opportunities and connect with your resources in your district and club.
Right. So essentially being curious with an eye to learn. Rocky, what are the first steps a club should take if they want to apply for a Rotary Foundation grant, district or global, for the very first time? What sort of resources are available to them?
Well, first resource I'll lead you to is the Rotary International Learning Center. There's a number of classes there that you can take and introduce you as an individual to what the process is. The other thing I'll tell you is that the districts, both districts, offer both district grant training and global grant training. You just need to keep your ear to the ground to listen to when those happen and go and make that happen. The other thing I'll highly recommend is that is that you talk amongst each other. There is the lack of education that we've talked about what these grants do and how you can use them and what they're for. Um, you could get a district grant for as little as the smallest amount you want to. You can ask district grant for $100.
Mhm.
You don't have to be a a 5-digit, 6-digit project in your mind. It can be a very small project. There are no lower limits to this process if you want to just get your involved and get working with it. So district grants are a great opportunity for you to build and learn about what you can do. And I can't emphasize this enough that it's an opportunity for you to add to your program. You can double the size of whatever you want to do. If it's something that you believe in the club, you can double it through a district grant. Global grants are a little bit more work. They take a little more time. It's part of a learning process because once you dip your toe into the global grant
Mhm.
and the difference you can make around the world, it's addictive. It really is. It's addictive when you can start helping people and making a difference. I tell you to go take classes as much as you can. Go and learn about the opportunities. Rotary has multiple things out there. If you just go under your grants section in RI, you'll find all kinds of opportunities for education about how it works. But you need to really, it has to be driven. There has to be somebody in your club that drives it. Find those people that show the interest and piggyback on their work and go ahead and do it.
Right. I see that one of our assistant governors, Pat Stack, is on the call. Pat is actually the chair of my district's district grants. Pat, do you want to add anything to what Rocky and Scott have already said about applying for grants?
Well, I think Rocky covered it quite well. My only advice also is I know, like on the 7120 website for district grants, we keep a list of the last 12 years of district grants that all the clubs have done. So that is a great resource to get ideas.
Hmm.
And again, the other option, as Rocky also mentioned, is communications. Talking with your local libraries, your local schools, your local fire departments, finding out just like in for a global grant, finding out what the real needs are in the area and working a project with that, and then knowing that you can get extra money from the district to help fund that activity. So it's a great way for a service project to run, and we strongly recommend that every club try to do that each year.
Perfect. And I just put into the chat the link to our District 7120's grant page if anyone wants to look at that. On that page are our upcoming grant management seminars and the link to past district grants. So for those that might be considering global grants, what advice do any of our panelists have for partnering with another club or district to expand reach and deepen long-term impact?
I can't talk to both districts, but I can tell you in CNY Rotary, we have a global grants committee that is active, strong, and full of knowledge and help in how you develop and how you get together and build a global grant. A global grant is a partnership, and you must establish that partnership. And understanding people who have gone through this partnership is a key to make sure that you can go out there and find the people that help it. You have to have a mission in mind. So the first thing you do is you got to have a mission. You got to have something you're going to do. You're going to get a host club that's going to sponsor it. You're going to get a host district. You're going to ask other districts, do you believe in this project for different sponsoring of money? And it just snowballs once you get that idea and you start fostering it and you push for it. So a global grant is one of those things that's not a 1 year. This is not your president year. This is something you build and plant and you develop for years to come and you follow up with. So it's a one subtlety between that and the district.
Right. So that's a good reminder that not everything needs to be done during your club presidential year. For some clubs, it may be just putting out suggestions and ideas. For other clubs, it may be that the president-elect is coming in midway through a cycle on a global grant process. But if nothing else, be aware that there is money out there, both at the district and the global grants to help you do what you want to do in your local and global communities. So now let's zoom out to all of the club, district, and Rotary International resources designed to help presidents strengthen clubs. Lori, what resources do you wish you knew about earlier as a president, your first go round, either at the club, district, or RI level?
So, I mean, RI is just so chock full of learning opportunities. And so, what I have done when I went through the first time is I took each of our board roles and then I did a list of the suggested training to start with, right? Once you get your feet wet, you like to, you kind of explore and go down a rabbit hole and take a whole bunch of stuff. But I think a lot of board positions are like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what training to start with. So I gave them a list so that they were able to, as we go into the new year, take similar to what you've done for us, right? Take these classes before our next meeting, right? And so then you have a little bit of talking knowledge. And the one thing I did know about and I way appreciate is the graphic and the brand center because I do a lot of graphic design myself, so I am super appreciative that that's available to us.
Perfect. So the Rotary Learning Center is probably a good starting point, and it just reinforces why for each of these fireside chats, we gave each of you a list of anywhere between 3 and 5 classes to take in the Learning Center. So if you haven't gone and done any of those classes, it's not too late. You can always pick up new things, even if you don't get to it until the start of your presidential year. Um,
I would
but
also just add to that. There are district events, district conferences, district learning centers, districts, all kinds of things where you can get together with fellow Rotarians. There's nothing like face-to-face conversations to learn about what Rotary does and what you can do. So I can't overemphasize the opportunities that we don't take advantage of as we used to, is to get some more face-to-face. Let's make sure that we continue to push that, and we get together face to face and look at those opportunities as a president, that you can come and talk with other presidents, other district leaderships, other Rotarians that will help you in so many ways. So I can't overemphasize that enough about taking advantage of those programs.
Rocky, I still so love you. That is a great answer.
All right, all right. First beer's on you. Okay.
Okay, oh, no. But that's a great plug for our in-person President-elect Learning Seminar in Syracuse, September 14th and 15th. Many people, particularly Encore presidents, may not see a value in driving to Syracuse. If you live way down, south of Albany or, out in the southern tier for a day or two. But I can guarantee you getting in a room with, 100 to 200 president elects and leaders of our district is just so invigorating. And you end up leaving knowing that you're not doing this alone and you know that you've got support. So if you have not signed up for the Empire Pels President-elect Learning Seminar in Syracuse, please do so. And I'm going to ask Pamela to put the link in the chat so you have no excuses for not knowing how to do it.
It's March, everybody.
What did I say?
March.
February?
September.
September, February. It's in Syracuse. Yes, Lori.
Thanks, Lizzie, for putting my hand up for me. I didn't update my Zoom. Apparently, there's a new update today. Anyway, what I would say to piggyback on that, when you go to PELS, when you go to any of these things, bring yourself a list of questions. So, and that's what I did the last time. I drove everybody crazy. I'm like, okay, when do you have your meetings? When do you have your meetings? Where do you have your meetings? So I kind of got myself a whole database of everybody I talked to and what they did so that I could bring that information back to my club.
Right. And that's one of the reasons what we're trying to give you worksheets at each of these fireside chats that you can you can write down things that you want to learn more about. And then the other thing about PELS is we're going to try to mix people up so that you're not sitting with people that you already know and you're forced to talk to people from the other district or other part of your own district. So we're going to ask you to leave your comfort zone a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay. One last question is, well, maybe there might be another question. How do you ensure that your club is actually using district support effectively? You know, the grants, the leadership, committees, you know, all the training that's available. Or what advice would you give to President-elects? Rocky, have any thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'll share it with you. And it's the simple thing that as a president, your job is not to talk, your job is to listen. And as you're listening, listen to the conversations about things that maybe you can get support from your district on. Somebody's having a question about, hey, I don't know how we're going to get this to make this happen. How are we going to do this? I don't know how to build whatever the PR, the latest PR model is together. We have people in all the districts that can help you in that endeavor. If you don't know how to do update Facebook, you don't know how to use Instagram, you don't know, there are people in the district who raise their hands there to help you. This is not something you have to do on your own. Listen to what's going on in your club, listen to the things that are happening, and be cognizant of the little things that you could help in your district. And if you don't know who to reach on your district, there's two people here that we'll start with. Exactly. Start with those two people and go there. Ask your question. Hey, we got this. We want to do this following. How do we make this happen? Kind of situation. So your job is to listen, react, and ask questions. And that's going to be the key to making this successful.
Absolutely. And I would guarantee I probably won't know the questions to all the answers to all the questions you ask, but my job is to find out who does. My other piece of advice to answer that question is that you, as a president-elect, have the ability to bring people together from other clubs. So as you meet folks, either in your own district or from next door, think about doing joint club meetings or joint service projects, because the more we get together, the better and longer impact we can have. I think that's all I'm going to ask on that. So now what I want to do is turn our attention to the elephant in the room, fundraising. Because obviously none of this works without sustainable revenue, our impact, our engagement, adaptability. So fundraising does both enhance participant engagement and expand our reach. It brings members together around a purpose and connects your community, your club, to the broader community. So what are some fundraising models that work best for Rotary clubs today, whether it be events, sponsorships, direct giving, or something else, and why? Lori, as a Encore president, do you want to take a stab at that first?
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that, only because we've been a little bit in a rut in our club. However, we do have a new fundraiser that was brought to us by a brand new member, which we're going to try. We're going to have a disc golf tournament, which is I'm like, I don't know how to play, but it sounds like fun. You know, anything to get outside and get some exercise, I'm in. So we've been having a euchre tournament twice a year for forever, since I was a teenager, I think. And it's very successful, and we have such a following now. It's hard to say, well, just gosh, it's harder than it looks, I'm sure, especially at my age, right, honey? Uh, but I can run around and be crazy, so that's fine. So we have such a following with a euchre. I mean, I get, we usually have it in March or April, and then again in October. And I'm getting people. It's only middle of January that have been in our tournaments before. Hey, when's the next date? When's the next date? When's the next date? Right. So don't dismiss something that's been successful. Continue to do that. But it has to go through the same budgeting type of process with how much money we going to spend on it. What kind of marketing do we need to do? You know, all of the things that you would do with any project, right? You have to do that for a fundraiser as well. And then, of course, the bigger elephant in the room is the resources to run it, right?
Mm,
Right? You got to have peoples, right? If you don't have peoples, then you may not be successful.
okay. So what advice do you have for getting people, particularly for something that's brand new, whether it be disc golf or a gardening project or books for kids at, elementary school?
Right. Yeah, so my advice is, as you know, I've already started doing this, is to start talking to the members individually, right? Sending an email through Club Runner is lovely, but to really get people engaged, especially people that may not come to meetings regularly or you haven't talked to one-on-one in a while, call up, have that conversation. Let's go have a cup of coffee, whatever it takes to find out what their interest is or their expertise and see how they could help. I find that that's if I say, "Hey, I really need your help," that seems to work pretty well. Of course, I put on the sad face too, and some other things.
That's perfect. And we talked about that face-to-face connection in one of our prior fireside chats. So it's nice to hear these themes coming back again.
Lisa,
Scott, do you have any? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add a little. We just fairly recently, in the last few years, our club, one of our biggest fundraisers was a joint activity that we did with a few other clubs, and that was to work at the Hill Cumorah concessions.
Mm,
And it was a big event. It was a lot of work, but it also was our biggest fundraiser. That all was discontinued. So we were left looking for both something to do and some way to raise, those kind of funds. And what our club settled on was having a festival, like a family festival. And that sounded great because it was part fundraiser and part activity and community involvement. But what we learned, the fundraising side of it, was that we really went out and just recruited sponsors for the event. Just shared what we do as a club, talked about what this event was going to be like, and just asked people to give us money to support that.
mm.
And what we found was the activity that this replaced, we more than doubled our revenue.
What?
Still a lot of work. It's, probably as much work or more, but it's also the nature of this festival lends itself very nicely to getting other community groups involved. We've brought in the scouts and, other volunteer organizations in the community. So it's been great that way, but it's also been a financial windfall for us. And it's kind of a feel-good event in the community. So sometimes you just have to think differently, but, and I don't want to gloss over this part. It takes the right people to go out in the community and ask for money and ask for the support. And year after year, even though you might have the same sponsor, somebody still has to follow up and ask them if they're going to continue to support that. So, but don't be afraid sometimes of totally changing the game. And that certainly has been a big deal for us in our
Hmm.
club.
Scott, how did your club decide to take on this particular project? Did you ask questions of the community, do an assessment? Did someone in the club come up with this bright idea?
Well, our community used to have a big festival years ago, and it was discontinued. Host of reasons, sometimes these events get too big and they get a little too out of control, and that was, part of the factor. And it was one of our members who, I don't know if he was still the president at that time or president-elect or past president, but in any event, he got a lot of support, kind of gathered up a small group to form a committee to think it through a little bit further. And it just kind of blossomed from there. So it went very well. And then once you've kind of done something like that a few times, the infrastructure takes over. You have people who chair different functions, and it's gone, pretty well. If we would have had, weather that cooperated every year, it would have been fantastic. But
Mm-mm.
some years it was, miserable. But it's, like I said, it's been a great thing, and it's been a great way to involve the community on, a weekend afternoon in the fall. Now moved into the
Absolutely.
summer.
Okay, gotcha. Other thoughts on fundraisers in either your clubs or clubs that you know of? It's an open question for anyone. Yep, Lori.
So we did something different the last 2 years for a foundation fundraiser, which is different all the proceeds for that just goes right back to the foundation. And we started out little and it's growing a little bit at a time, but we just do a walk at one of our parks,
Hmm.
right? And it's just a registration fee, kids are welcome, dogs are welcome. We get the rec department from Penfield involved so that they, know what's going on. But I think any fundraiser is not only making money, but also say, hey, community, we're here, we exist. And so the more times they see, Penfield Rotary around, the more questions and more engagement we get through the website, which I also take care of. So that's one of the things that we did as kind of a different fundraiser, just trying to support the foundation.
Love it. Love it.
I have some,
Rocky. Oh, I'm sorry. Who's wait? Go ahead.
that's me,
Cliff.
Cliff
Hey,
from
Cliff.
Northville Rotary.
Yep.
On that, our big fundraiser is a fine arts show, fine arts and woodworking show.
Mhm.
Started 17 years ago with 9 vendors, and we're now up to about 70 vendors
Mm.
coming in. And it brings a lot of people into the community, so it supports the businesses. Northville's kind of a small town, beautiful town, but a small town. Um, I did kind of an informal survey a couple of years ago. Um, how do people know about it? And most of the people say, "Oh, we know because you had it every year. We've come before." So
Mm.
we kind of targeted some things. We had tried billboards, and we were spending $1,000 for a billboard, and nobody was saying, "Gee, I saw the billboard." So we do have our yard signs that we put out and like that. So cutting the expenses of it and finding what works, and even just doing an informal survey. Um, we don't charge to come in, and we had people, asking was there a charge. So we made up a donation box
Hmm.
and just put it up there. Donations here. If somebody says, what's the cost that, and we get $400 or $500 a year just for having it out there. The whole thing, that's our main budget on it. And
Wow.
that's somewhere around $20,000 a year we make on that, from vendor fees, from raffles, from people giving just the regular donations.
Wow, very cool. So flipping that on the other end, and then once again, this is an open question. What do you do to prevent burnout and keep members engaged and protect your profit for these events that you do year after year after year? My club is a relatively new club. We're only 8 years. Actually, we just turned nine years last week. And the idea of putting on a big project like this scares me to death. But what advice do you have for how to, like I said, protect members' energies and interests?
Just to continue on, we started off with a really small event
Okay.
and grew it. That to try to run a huge thing to begin with. I mean, some people might pull it off, but it was somebody's idea. It worked, and then it grew, and we added on to it. We do a program and take ads. That's another part of it. And we have businesses that come every year and kind of expect it. So we build on successes and adjust it as we need it.
Right. So basically, what I hear you saying is start small, but evaluate, and get input from members and community members, club members and community members.
Find out what works and build on that, and find out what doesn't work and say, okay, good try, but let's go on to something
Yeah,
else.
perfect. Lori, I see your hand up.
Yeah, things just go in my head as people talk. Yes, it's a scary place in there. So one of the things for the euchre tournament, for example, that turned out to be very successful is before we just had registration fees, but to build on what other people said, also look for sponsors, right? So we said, there's 8 rounds in this tournament. Why don't we get a sponsor for each round? Right? So then what I do is up on the big screen in front during that round 1, whoever the sponsor is gets their ad up in front of all the people at the tournament. And one of our members suggested that. I'm like, we never thought of that before. We
Right.
always just did the registration fees, right? So, getting sponsors is a great supplemental way for almost any event, I think, if you are a little creative.
And sponsors just pay money to have their name splashed. Okay.
And then we do a thank you brochure that we hand out to everybody as they leave, and we have all the sponsors in that little, bifold brochure, right? So everybody has something they can take home with them, and then we also put it on the website, right? So
Yeah.
so we try to do several touch points for our sponsors. Again, it's not a lot of money, but it all adds up, right?
Right. Right. Perfect. Thank you very much. Um, as we begin thinking about our presidential year and following on that, you've got to understand that presidents don't just manage one year. You're setting up the next 5 years. And fortunately, the Rotary Action Plan supports that mentality because it challenges us to increase our ability to adapt, which requires long-term financial thinking and not just year-to-year fundraising. Rocky, what financial warning signs should presidents look for early in their Rotary year that might threaten sustainability long term?
And that is the one is that you need to understand your due structure. Every club
Okay.
has a due structure, and you need to understand what are your fixed expenses. Lori probably has a better terminology for it, but you have some fixed expenses. You have district dues, you have RI dues, and you have a bunch of other things. PELS expenses, you've got magazine expenses. You need to take a look at the details are with those. And regardless of what you think, those change year to year. So you need to be planning your due structure such that you're covering the cost. And every club is different in how you cover those costs and how things work. So the first thing you need to do is understand what are your true liabilities, what are you absolutely have to pay, whether you have one member or 100 members, there is a cost associated with. So your due structures have to be set up straight to begin with. So take a look at that and make sure that things are working as you think. You also have what I call your associated meeting expenses. Every club handles your meeting expenses different, whether you pay to go or the club covers or however you work out your meeting expenses. You got to make sure that you understand how the meeting expenses curve for whatever your events are and how you're working. The final thing is that you need to take a look at what's your revenue, right? Are the things? Are they sustainable? Are they functioning? One of the things that I always encourage people to do, your treasurer is going to hate you, but show a 5 year, what's our revenue for 5 years? What have these projects generated? And understand trends are trends. It doesn't mean that if it's trending downward, that you're going to come in and be this magical person and all of a sudden drive up 20% increase in revenue on these things. You just must plan for the things that are happening in your community and in around there. So understanding what your fixed cost, what your dues are, understand your meeting expenses and what you're tapping your membership for. And then the final thing, understand the trends of your revenue sources and how you're getting money. What are those things happening? And Cliff, thank you for sharing that. There are 200 people here who have revenue ideas and have different ways of making money. And every one of those 200 president-elects will be glad to share an idea with anyone else. We do not have to dream up our own plans for raising funds. You have 200 people in this whole group that raise funds for clubs. And I'm sure if we just sit and talked about it, that there's something all of us can learn and develop from. And by the way, I'm sure they'll help you in the process of getting it set up.
Absolutely. And a really good way to do that is to come to in-person PELS, March 14th or 15th in Syracuse.
So have a banner running across there. Get a banner running across there.
Yeah, I should, right? I need a sponsor for that.
There we go. There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Lisa, if I could just kind of tack on to Rocky, we've talked about it, and this kind of connects some of the dots, I think. But what we really haven't focused on is that the budget and looking at the finances, part of that is to determine what the club dues charged to your own club members should be. You know, Rocky kind of said it, but kind of went right over it. But I think that is one of the considerations, RI dues go up every year. District dues may or may not go up every year, but eventually they increase. So those fixed costs tend to increase, just like everything else in our lives. And I know from my experience, clubs always are hesitant. A club president doesn't want to be the one that, drops the hammer and increases the dues. But dues don't have to be increased in 5 or 10 or $25 increments. It can be $1 a year or something, so just don't forget that that's part of the process of the budget, is to help you set the dues that you're going to charge your club to keep this, kind of the whole finance thing running and not finding yourself in the hole, before the year's up.
Great point. Great point. Lizzie?
Yeah, I just want to add, my club has agreed to increase our dues $5 a year for however many years we have to keep up with the increased cost. And if you don't know, Rotary is increasing dues by the Rotary International dues by $375 a year for the next 4 years. So you definitely got to factor that in because that's significant over the next 4 years. And our club went from having a pretty standard surplus in our club account to all of a sudden being like, wow, we don't have enough money for everything we've always had enough money for because some of that snuck up on us. Because like Scott said, you don't want to be the guy or gal who raised dues. But if you explain it to your club as to the reasoning behind these changes and the necessity for it in order to keep your club functional and in the black, most of the time they understand. Doesn't mean it's always going to be affordable for everybody at the end of the day, but you got to be fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And our club has a separate fund for people who need assistance with their dues,
Right,
if it comes
likewise.
down to that.
I was going to say, likewise, if your club has a humongous, club dues, ask the question, do we need to get $500 per person for club dues, or can we do with a little bit less if we do more fundraising? So definitely, once again, take a look at your budget, take a look at your dues structure, and know that as a club president, you can start asking the questions and begin to make some of these changes. So we are coming up on 8 o'clock and we've covered a lot of ground, but I wanted to turn, the last couple minutes over to you as president-elects to ask what questions or challenges or real situations you're facing now in your clubs as president-elects. It can be related to fundraising and finances or something completely different. But is there something that's on any of your minds that you want an answer to, since we have all these bright people in the room tonight? Helen, is that your hand?
Is my hand, yes. As some of you know, I belong to the Rotary Club of International Service Impacting Women and Children. We're an E-Club and we're an international E-Club. And we are a grand spanking total of 18 months old. So when you say brand new club, we are a brand new club. We don't have a lot of history to draw from. Fortunately, our entire board are past Rotarians. So we have experience from brick and mortar clubs. But if you know anything about e-clubs, they're very different than brick and mortar clubs, have very unique needs. One of our biggest challenges is fundraising because we have people in Africa, we have people in Oregon, we have people in North Carolina, we have people in Ohio. So we're not all locally together.
Yeah.
And that makes fundraising very difficult. So we have to do essentially either fundraising in very small groups within our local area, or we have to do virtual fundraising. And everybody says, oh, virtual fundraising is very easy. No, it isn't. It really isn't. So we have very unique challenges. And we have done, in the past, we have done a bingo, but it was a very localized bingo. Fortunately, it raised enough money to get us through the year, and we were very happy about that. We did a night of trivia, and that was fun, but not extremely financially successful. So there are avenues we're trying to pursue, but we're always in need of suggestions. So I'm putting it out there to all you very brilliant PEs that you might offer suggestions to us. If you want to put it in the chat, if you want to email me or text me, that would be great. I'm open to any suggestions you might have.
Very good question, Helen. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the first ideas that come to my head is what about partnering with a brick or mortar club and doing, joint fundraiser that way. But I'm not the know-all, it's just an idea. Lori, see your hand patiently up.
Yeah, so just the one thing I didn't mention before is one of the things that we always struggled with was how to get everybody to pay the required amount for so that we could make sure to get our grants. And so what our club elected to do was they'll say, okay, this is our dues, this is the $35 altogether, this is the amount, right? And so it's just included as part of our dues, and then we account for it separately and send it in separately so that we know that we always have 100% of our people getting that $35 in so that we can take advantage of that district grant money.
Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Any other closing thoughts? Ideas, questions? Okay.
Terrence has an idea.
Okay, good. I've got too much going on. Terry.
No,
Terrence.
I couldn't find the hand raiser thing. So just more of a comment than anything. Last summer, our club in Cortland participated in a Meals of Hope event where a lot of different organizations and individuals from around the community came together, and it's basically doling out dried cereal and things like that to then be distributed to food pantries. Not sure we'll do the same group again, but what we learned was that having an event that involves a lot of different groups from and just individuals from the community was like electrifying. Everybody thought how great it was because not only you're coming together for a good cause, but you're building community at the same time. That's what everybody's response was. So that's what I'm looking for is an event or events that would involve that real community building aspect as well. That was, I think, as important as the food that was distributed.
Thank you, Terrence. That really is a good point. Collaborating with community partners makes our impact go a little bit further. So yes, thank you, everybody. Particularly thank our panelists for sharing real practical insight. Thank you to you, the president-elects, for leaning into a topic that's helping us maintain strong and sustainable clubs. I think the big takeaway tonight is that financial leadership doesn't mean being an accountant, but thinking about how your money aligns with your club's mission and how your club aligns with the Rotary Action Plan. When you budget intentionally, you increase impact. When you use grants and partnerships, you expand our reach. When you fundraise strategically, you enhance participant engagement. And when you build systems and reserves, you increase your ability to adapt. A reminder that you don't have to do this alone. Your district, Rotary National, fellow clubs, the in-person President-elect Learning Seminar in Syracuse are all part of your support network. I've put into the chat the reflection worksheet, at least the link to the reflection worksheet. If you wouldn't mind, take a few minutes when we're done and just jot out some thoughts in terms of what you learned tonight. Jot down key takeaways, any ideas that were sparked by the panel, and maybe one or two priorities that you'd like to focus on before July 1st. The other thing I put in the chat is a link to our post-fireside chat evaluation. Your feedback tonight will help us improve and plan future sessions. including the in-person President-elect Learning Seminar in Syracuse, March 13th to 14th to 15th, rather. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time, your energy, and your commitment to leading strong and vibrant Rotary clubs. Have a great night, and we'll see you in Syracuse.